The reason I want to talk to you about warm-ups today is there's been a few like videos I've noticed floating around in TikTok, and obviously everything on TikTok is real. So a big thing is like people are saying that you don't need to warm up before you work out. And I know last year you and I think we did a video on like cold mobility versus warm mobility, and you kind of touched upon warm-ups there. But I thought we can have a bit of a longer form conversation around it.
Yeah, well, let's start with beginning with what I think this is. When you're saying, like, you see people saying, "Oh, don't warm up." Always these like super extreme and dogmatic positions, which I have held at some point, or hold in different ways, or held in different ways. They always stem from someone else saying something like, "You should be prepared to work out before warming up." And then someone else interprets that as, "I don't need to warm up." So you know what I mean? Yeah. There's always this like trickle down effect for what original messaging was sent by like main influencers. And then other people are kind of, maybe not even maliciously, they're just saying a more dumbed down version of that, which sounds more like blunt, you know what I mean? But yeah, so warm-ups are important. You should warm up. Let's get to the point.
End of the podcast.
You should warm up. The cold mobility thing is like, you shouldn't have to absolutely warm up. Like some people be like, "Oh man, if I don't," we've had the same conversation for 3 years. "If I don't foam roll for 15 minutes and if I don't do these 3 stretches for 40 seconds each, my knee's going to explode." That's a problem. You should be doing the things to make your knee better versus worrying about doing your 30-minute warm-up. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't absolutely have to warm up. If you had to suddenly sprint to catch a bus, or run to get your kid before he ran on the road in front of a car, or another podcast we talked about like just being generally able, like you're going to go for a hike one day. You shouldn't have to get out your 2-hour drive, do a bunch of warm-up mobility, and then begin your hike.
It's like Kelly Starrett's whole thing about being a supple leopard.
The ready state.
Yeah.
So it's like you shouldn't absolutely need and depend on warm-up, but you do warm up, and why we think you should is because it is good for you to transition if you were just sitting for 4 hours at a desk to slightly start to elevate your heart rate so it's not a spike on the system. To practice the given movements you're going to do and the range of motions you're going to do. There's lots of really good reasons to warm up, but it's not like you shouldn't be like absolutely dependent on it.
So is there like a specific reason why? Like this is why you should warm up?
Oh yeah. So like practice your range of motion. So like if you're doing a back squat warm up, like you should be practicing your range of motion. Maybe you're doing a different style that day. It's like a heels elevated back squat or a wide stance or to a box. So you want to practice the movement and the range of motion so that as you load more weight, you are prepared for it. Right? That's a strength example. Let's give a running example. You should almost never just go into a run because of people in our modern society. Again, you probably sit a lot. You probably don't exercise as much, resting, squatting, and ankle dorsiflexion. You maybe have other issues going on. Like you probably should spend 5 at least, or like 10 to 12 minutes warming up before your run. So, and especially in the winter here in Canada, right? Like you're going to be more likely to have an injury in the cold than in the summer. So like there's lots of reasons why you should warm up. Skill, range of motion, transition from whatever you're doing before, but I'm not saying you absolutely need to.
Do you think every warm-up should have like a blood flow component followed by like more of a specific warm-up for that given movement? Like I know in the past, I think more so with like conditioning. Like if I have a conditioning piece, all right, I will hop on the assault bike for 3 minutes to get my body warm. And then I might like practice some of the movements that I'm going to be doing in that conditioning piece. But when it comes to back squat, a lot of the times I won't hop on the rower to warm up. I'll literally just do empty bar back squats or air squats or hip openers and things like that.
Yeah, there are varying opinions from people who have fancy letters after their name who are on different sides of this discussion. But I agree with your stance, which is if you're going to be doing conditioning type work, you should be preparing your heart rate for that type of work so it doesn't just slam into you, and some general movement. And yeah, if you're doing strength training, you can just practice your strength movements. But what we do in our gym for our classes, because say our class is going to have a bunch of strength before conditioning, we still usually do some type of blood flow because it is helpful, again, for the transition from 4 hours of desk work to bring your heart rate up to moving the joints around. There's a lot of important reasons why that can be a good thing for you to do, even if you're doing a very strength type workout.
This might be a completely different podcast topic, but I think it's related, which is like this old argument around static stretching versus dynamic stretching, especially to warm up for movements. Do you have any like opinions or thoughts on that?
I see varying opinions all the time from people who are flexibility research. So I don't want to like say too much, because I see people again who are got letters after their name, provide research. I'll take a look at it. Who will be like static stretching before exercise is okay, but last 15 years people have been saying it's not okay. Yeah. But I think for now, until we know more, I think the better conventional wisdom, even if it's not 100% right, is to do dynamic stuff before you work out. So you're doing shoulder circles and shrugs and hip swings and hip circles, walking lunges, bear crawl, before you do your back squats, whatever. That is going to be, right now seems to be a better idea than holding a couch stretch for a minute per leg. Again, it might not actually be, but right now I think that's the better advice to give people is more, and dynamic's not even a good word. It just means you're just doing range of motion and just blood flow.
It's funny. I feel like I've never looked at what those studies have said, but I always wonder because, was it like, okay, did someone just hold couch stretch for 3 minutes and then they immediately put 135 on the bar and just started lifting? It's like, then of course your body's not going to be used to that movement. It might get hurt. But like, I don't know if they did more of a specific warm up. I feel like static stretching can't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like because I had this thing where I was doing pigeon.
Yeah. I was thinking of that right now.
I would I don't know why I stopped. I lifted so much heavier when I did. I would do pigeon 2 minutes per side.
Yep.
And it was more so, I think, just like a superstition I would have before I hit the platform for weightlifting.
Yep.
But it was a great way of opening my hips and making me more comfortable in the bottom.
Yeah, and I think that's being supported by other people who are like, hey, it's actually not as demonized as people have been saying for years. But yeah, it's kind of like what you also said, which is you're probably doing other things too. It's not just 3 static stretches and then doing exercise. It's you're doing static stretches with other things to prepare you. But until we know more, I think people should do some more just general movement.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else on warm-ups?
I think so. I used to warm up like 20 or 30 minutes back in my Edo Portal days. So I was doing like a 2-hour workout, which they were. 30 minutes of it was like warm up. Now I think that's just nonsense. One, for time, but I think a warm up for general strength and conditioning is like under 15 minutes for sure.
Yeah.
And personally for me now, it does depend on the session. Like if I'm doing something more rigorous, okay, Olympic weightlifting, handstands, muscle ups, stuff like that, I'll take more time to prepare. I don't mean this in any kind of demeaning way because I'm partaking in it right now, but today I had more of like a bodybuilding, like hypertrophy workout, which is just like simple. I think I did 2 minutes of warm up, like super quick. And I did my first movement because it's like, I don't need all this fancy stuff for like a split squat and then a front squat. You know what I mean? Again, some people might need a little bit more, but my point is that I think what you're doing dictates the warm up.
Yeah. Actually, so I know for me, and this is more so something I've started to do recently, because I do a lot more strength work than just like standard CrossFit work or just conditioning pieces. But if I have 5 strength workouts, I might do a general blood flow warm up for like 5 minutes, and then I'll go to whatever my first strength piece is. So let's say it's going to be a superset of deadlifts and back squats. It's a horrible example, but regardless, we're going heavy on the compounds.
Superset.
Okay, I'm going to switch that to back squats and a half kneeling press.
Sure.
Okay. I would probably do 2 warm-up sets of my back squat, depending how heavy I'm going. If I'm doing 5s, then obviously I'm going to do a lot more warm-up sets.
Yep.
But if I'm doing high rep, I'll probably do an empty barbell and then maybe 95 or whatever like my 50% would be. And I would do the same thing with my half kneeling press. Then I would go straight into my first strength set.
Yep.
But then this is kind of where the question comes. If right after that I have deadlifts and pull-ups, I might only do like 1 warm-up set of deadlifts and no warm-up set of pull-ups and go straight into that. Is that like kind of what you would do as well?
Yeah, your body's already warm at that point.
Okay.
So the only further warm-up you're going to do in a session is to go back to the very first piece we talked about, which is skill-specific or range of motion specific.
Perfect.
But yeah, I don't know why you do warm-up sets for other things unless for those reasons.
Yeah, just to get used to the movement pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there something else I feel like you were going to...
No, it's just going to be more ranting about things, but that's good.
People love the will rant, man.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I was going to say, which is like say you had a superset of like chin-ups and strict press.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so that's A1, A2, and then your B movement, your next movement was going to be like a single arm press. You just did a bilateral shoulder press. Now you're going to work on one arm and maybe a different grip. It's like, I'm not going to warm up that because I just did it with heavier weight. You know what I mean? I'm just good to go. And then also a lot of times your warm-up set can detract from your work. So let's use an example. You just did strict press and chin-ups, back-to-back or pull-ups, whatever. Your B movement is single arm press. Say, and I'm going to use a weight that is more applicable to more people. Say you can dumbbell press 25 pounds. For you to do a warm-up set of 15 pounds is probably going to detract from your motor units and make you not perform as well in your following sets. But if you were right into 25, you could probably do 3 sets of 10 there. But maybe if you did the 15s, now you can only do like 8, 8, 8, for example, right? It might not always work that way, but a lot of times that excess warm-up after you've already warmed up on your main lifts detracts from your session.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
You're still doing fitness, so you're detract, like you're still
For sure.
doing that 15-pound dumbbell. But if your goal is, say, further strength gains or whatever, you're missing out on that because you're robbing some stimulus.
It's funny. I thought this was going to be like a simple combo, like it would be a super short conversation, but it's actually a lot more complex as well. Because then when you think of strength work, like I think when I was doing Olympic weightlifting, or even if I'm just going to squat, because I squat fairly heavy or can squat fairly heavy, I'm not going to throw on 50% for my first rep.
Yep.
If I'm doing 5s, let's say, like I'm going to take gradual steps to actually even get to my first working set. So I think that's why it's important too, looking at your training day. And if you have, this is why you wouldn't want to program squats and deadlifts on the same day. But if you had squats and presses, putting your squats first, because that's probably going to take the longest to warm up, depending who you are and what that rep range is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just having these realizations.
Yeah. If push-ups are your first movement, your warm-up is nothing specific to push-ups.
Yeah.
And like in terms of like, you're not doing like tons of reps of push-ups. You're doing maybe some like general warm-up for upper body and range of motion, but then you go kind of into your first set of push-ups, right? Like you can do 8, maybe you do a set of 2 just to practice, but it's like, you're not going to warm that up much. Whereas a barbell, yeah, you got to do some things to get there.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I love running right now, because like warming up for Olympic weightlifting it's a workout in itself.
Yeah.
Warming up for running, it's nice because it's like, all right, I'll do a little bit of dynamic stretching, and then like my first kilometer might be a slower pace, and then I go straight into my working heart rate.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier.
That's why it's the most popular human fitness thing in the history of humans, because it's so easy to do.
Oh, uh-oh.
It is.
It's
pretty do it. You can do it anywhere, anytime.
Pretty fantastic. Anything else? That was good.
Warm-ups.
I enjoyed it. Warm-ups. Go and warm up your body. Hope you guys have the best day ever. These goodbyes are getting worse and worse. It's just like, end it.
Yeah.
We're done. Okay,
Done.
cool. Have the best day ever. Bye for now.